So we got the big Dart deal.
We, yeah, we did. I have to give credit to you and your crystal ball. Back in December, we had our first conversation about the Dart election, and you were right. The city council did pull out of the May 2nd election, or at least they took the Dart referendum off the ballot for the May 2nd election. So let's talk a little bit about that. Why would city council do that? Why would they put a referendum on the ballot and then take it away?
Well, service would end if we pulled out of Dart. Dart was saying service would end the next day. Trains would go by, buses would stop. So that was a risk, and this was a big negotiation. The cities were very unhappy with spending $120 million for a service nobody uses, goes up and up and up. This is our tax dollars. So Dart is basically bribing us with our own tax dollars with this deal. And we took the deal. Not every city is taking the deal. Addison's not taking the deal. Park Cities looks like they're not going to take the deal. They want out. And there's something to be said for that.
Yeah. It's really, the Park Cities thing is particularly interesting because they are isolated. They are completely surrounded by Dallas, which is, I guess you could say, distinctive of those particular cities, right? Like all the other cities are kind of like on the periphery of the zone, but they're right in the middle, which I'm sure is going to create some complications.
It's interesting. Addison didn't take it, and Farmers Branch. So Plano and Irving were the leaders in this, in trying to force something. And shout out to Mayor Rick Stouffer for being a great leader and really trying to put pressure on Dart and getting this deal. City Council was a love fest. Everyone was congratulating themselves, patting themselves on the back, but not every city is taking the deal. Farmers Branch was very contentious in their council. Yeah. It was not unanimous. It ended up being 7-2 in Irving council. So there were votes against it.
Yep.
Luis Canosa and John Block. But people were happy that we got something, and the politicians are relieved that we don't have to
pull out of Dart,
figure out what to do
before the World Cup.
With Dart ending.
Yeah, and that's understandable. I think from a political perspective, this is all very understandable. But we do need to talk about this agreement. We do need to talk about what we got out of it.
And when you actually read it, and it's not exactly just money back.
Yeah, as they say, the devil's in the details, right? And there appears to be a lot of strings tied to this victory, that we got in this
interlocal agreement.
Yeah, they call it an ILA for short. So maybe we dive into that a little bit.
Well, sure. So basically, we're getting 5% back of our sales tax. We wanted 25% back, but we're getting 5% back. Dart is giving us a portion that's being matched by the regional transportation council governments, and it goes up 1% every year for 5 years. So it gets up to 10%. So we will, at the end of this 2031, be getting over $10 million.
Yeah, and if I recall correctly, the first year will be based on 2024's tax number, and then does it go sequentially from there? Is like next year based on 2025's and then 2026?
Right.
So we'll never actually get back a full 10% of the amount that we're paying in that given year. It would be the amount that we're paying it would be 10% of the amount that we would have paid 2 years previous to that.
And the tax revenue goes up, but in case it doesn't go up, the cities are at the end of the line. So the agreement says they can delay payments to the cities if the tax receipts are coming. So Dart gets paid first.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah. So it's contingent on economic growth, inflation, probably a combination of those two, right? So
Dart is about the worst managed institution you could possibly imagine.
Okay.
The bureaucracy, meetings to have meetings, can't get anything done. And it just makes sense because they get so much money coming in just automatically on autopilot. And there's no accountability. This is not a free market. Nobody rides Dart. We've talked about the ridership decline.
Yeah,
and there's no accountability. The money just keeps on flowing in. So in that type of situation, it does not lead to a flexible, accommodating, let's work with you, let's get this done. No, it's like, well, we provide the services, our argument is nobody rides it, and their argument is, well, what can we do? They're just hamstrung with their bureaucracy to actually do anything different.
Yeah, we've developed this bureaucracy, we've developed this infrastructure. It's just what we do. It's a thing that's here. So let's just keep it there. Let's not change it. Let's not do anything that dramatically changes or improves, or
even when you need to dramatically change it, when as we talked about, since 2014, the ridership population has gone up, ridership's declined. If this was a business, you would have to do something about this. You would have to change your model, but there's just no incentive to be accountable in that way.
Yeah.
That's the number one thing what the mayor says is there's no butts in seats. We're paying for this service, and it's just not worth it because people don't use it. And Dallas has control. Control over Dart is this dartboard, and Dallas has control over it.
I think it's good to talk about the numbers too, because in 2024, I don't have the exact totals in front of us, but it was approximate to 100 million in 2024, right? So that means that under this agreement we would get 5% of that back. So we get we pay 100 million, we get 5 back, right? So that's 5 million out of this 100 million paid out, and then the next year, the amount paid to Dart is probably somewhere approximate to $105 million. I know in 2025 it was 110, correct? So
it'll probably be 120
in 2026. Yeah. So we'll so in this year, if we manage to meet the terms and conditions of the agreement, which is a question in and of itself, we would get $5 million back in this year, and then next year it would be 5% of 110, which probably approximates about 106 million, somewhere around there. Bad at mental math, apologize, but so it's not like we're getting a huge chunk of this money back. We're still paying a lot of money to
control a small piece of it.
Yeah,
but it's not really even under our control. It still goes through Dart, has to be approved from them, and then they don't even have to run it. So we have to do the work and the heavy lifting. Yeah. They still control what it is we're spending it on. So we can't really use the money the way we think is best. We have to run it through them.
Yeah. So I think that's where we have to be really clear on what this ILA means. Is it's not just pure money just coming back into the city budget. Like, we couldn't take this money and use it to build like a new rec center or something like that. Because over the course of 6 years, it's going to be a pretty decent chunk of money. We're talking tens of millions of dollars. And you could actually do something meaningful with that money if there were no strings attached. But there are strings attached.
And the first 2 strings attached is you have to drop your election. So it's very clear. Cities have to drop their election, and they cannot lobby the legislature to change this 1%. The flow of money to Dart must continue. So we are locked into Dart. The elections by state law can only come around every 6 years. So we are locked into Dart for another 6 years, which, isn't great. And we're losing our leverage too. Yeah. Now it is good to get a little something back. It is good to get a little something.
Sure. It's not to say that there was nothing gained from this deal. And it, obviously the funds are helpful. I mean, it does give us a little bit of the city a bit of a leeway to improve its internal transportation system. Like, we can add things that actually make Dart maybe Dart more effective, more useful. So I mean, I'm very curious to see what the city manager is going to present.
Right.
You have to present your proposal by June 30th in order to get the funds. Right. So it is March the 7th, right? So we've got a little over 3 months to present something to Dart.
It has to be approved by Dart.
And then it has to be approved. So the clock is ticking, Mr. Hillman. So I hope you have some ideas.
The nice thing is we do get the money up front. It's not just all reimbursed.
Yeah.
But we do have to do reports. We do carry audit risk. We do have to do all of the implementation. So we are doing the work.
It's more than just like putting together like just a proposal. Like there's it has to be very detailed, and you have to follow through with their auditing processes. And
and if it doesn't follow what they actually approved, they can claw that money back.
Yeah, it's almost you're going to have to increase staff in order to comply with this. So you're going to have to spend quite a bit of money just to be able to comply with the funds that you're receiving.
It almost, I mean, that part of it almost seems like a good deal for Dart in a way, that they still maintain control over how it's used because they can veto it.
Yeah.
But then they're not the ones who can actually do it. But of course, the cities are happy because the cities just want to control their own money and do something that actually serves their people. And Dart just does not care about that. They just don't care. It's that over bureaucratization where it's just not responsive to what the public actually needs and is using.
The governance portion of this, I think we need to talk about that too, because that is potentially a pretty big win for the city of Irving and the other member cities. I think one of the biggest issues that we talked about very early on is that under the current governance structure, Dallas has a permanent majority on Dart. And there's nothing you can do about that. So whatever Dallas wants, Dallas is going to get. I mean, under the proposed revised structure, that changes. Dallas's representation on the board goes from about 53 to 45%, and each member city gets at least one vote, which I think is helpful. So that is a win, but those changes are still pending, right? Like those changes haven't necessarily been implemented, to my understanding.
And we did not make it a condition of the ILA.
Yeah, and that is, I mean, again, as a voter, right? That's the kind of stuff that concerns me a little bit. I guess like my general takeaway from all of this is not to say that that all is lost or that none of this is bad or none of this was good. There was a lot of good things here. The ability to control this money, to have more control over this money, to get some concessions to improve our internal transportation system, but at the same time, it does feel like they could have maybe bargained a little bit harder, maybe negotiated a little bit better.
Well, it's difficult. You said it's when committees are negotiating with committees.
Yeah,
it's tough.
Yeah, exactly.
And the leverage Dart had was saying, "Hey, we're going to cut everything off if you withdraw." Well, we don't want that. We don't want to have to figure that out. Plus, Dart had the leverage of, well, you're going to be paying the debt for a decade after we have this massive debt. You're on the hook for it.
Yeah.
When Nadine Lee spoke on this in the Irving town hall, somebody asked her that question: what is the debt Irving was responsible for? It's shocking how she doesn't know the details of anything. She's the CEO of Dart, and she was profiled in the latest D magazine.
There you go.
It's just this puff piece on her. And again, they ask her a question. She's like, ha ha ha, I'll have to get back to you on that. She just did not know basic details in that town hall. Is really quite something.
Yeah.
But that's a critical question for us to consider: is how much part of the debt do we even owe? So they would shut down service. You'd have to pay all this money for 8-10 years. But then the cities had leverage because we have the election. So that was the back and forth was, what are we going to give you to make you pull the election? When we pull the election, we kind of lose the leverage. And the governance piece is still out there, and it has to be changed by the Texas Ledge.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I guess, I understand there's a lot of moving parts here, and there's a lot of factors that just cannot be controlled. But part of me would have liked to maybe have seen delaying taking the referendum off the ballot until the actual governance structures were in place, or there was a contingency in the
Yeah.
agreement, right? To basically say, like,
Yeah.
okay, like this agreement does not go into effect unless, the governance structure as proposed actually takes place,
changes.
But that wasn't in there. That would have been a nice provision, I think, to have, not to be hypercritical, because I know this is a lot of work went into this, a lot of back and forth, and again, sometimes when you make a deal, both parties kind of walk away. The sign of a good deal is if both parties walk away a little angry about it. So that generally shows that both parties probably negotiated well and did the best that they could. Still, I don't know. I still have a bad taste in my mouth just with this whole thing. Just the way this, the DART kind of was initially implemented, the way that it's sort of developed and grown over the years. It's become kind of a bigger and bigger problem, right? The city, the DFW Metroplex continues to grow in population, and it's not showing any signs of stopping in the near future. Yet ridership continues to decline. So we just, we just have this massive infrastructure that's weighing down our pocketbooks.
Yeah.
And it's not really providing solution, not really providing much benefits to folks. And not to say that, again, we're not anti-transportation. We're not anti-public transportation here. We just want to see a system that works and that's cost effective and that makes sense for our area, right? We're not New York. We're not Chicago. It's a different, what we experienced in DFW is quite different than those cities, and our public transit should reflect those realities.
Well, let me tell you what does work. And in my experience living in Washington, D.C. metro area with the metro buses was incredible. It was amazing public transportation, which I didn't quite realize when I moved there, because I was thinking of the metro trains, which are quite extensive system. But there are so many buses, they go so many different places, they come so regularly that I got to a point where, well, I don't even need to have a car, first of all.
Yeah.
Second of all, I don't even need to check the schedule because I can just kind of go and wait, and I know the bus will come, and I know it'll take me to where I need to go.
Yeah.
And we can talk about what we want to do with this money, a little over $5 million.
Yeah.
We've got till June 30th. There are various ideas that people are proposing. I would love to see a real bus system, something like DC, where you just have a lot of buses and people can rely on it. You don't have to wait for a long time and transfer.
Yeah.
There was all this talk about, will people need this bus service to get to medical treatment? And the mayor always said, this isn't even working for those people because of the wait times and the transfer times, and maybe you need restroom access. And we actually want to help these people, and the system now isn't helping them. So there's a lot of different ideas of things to do. Probably the worst idea is bringing back the buses that were canceled, because those are just huge buses, constantly empty. I'm always seeing them.
Yeah,
nobody there, nobody there.
During our last podcast, we went and we took the bus that was being canceled, and I think it was kind of a little tongue-in-cheek, I suppose. But I agree that those canceled bus lines really weren't serving. That they really weren't getting enough ridership to justify those costs, and that makes sense, I think, from a certain perspective. But Irving still has huge gaps in its public transportation network that need to be ameliorated, for lack of a better way of putting it.
And there was a lot of public outcry at that town hall, at city council. Yeah. People are always saying, bring back the buses, bring back the buses. Now, you'll notice it's never people who actually use the buses themselves. All of the comments are people who are saying on behalf of others.
Yeah.
Now,
I that's probably the case with most people that support public transportation. I think people in general like the idea of public transportation. They're just, again, like I said before, the devil's in the details. Like, you really got to look at all these details.
I'm trying to remember anybody who spoke in public comment who said, I rely on this. I don't think, and I live in Irving.
There was one.
There were people outside of Irving who said, I rely on it.
Yeah.
but somebody in Irving who said, I use this, not just occasionally, but regularly. I rely on it
every day.
Now, there are those people who rely on it, but can you do other things than paying money for a gigantic bus that's just going around with maybe one person?
Yeah.
Targeted solutions for vulnerable populations, I think could be a lot more cost effective and a lot more convenient if you are having a small shuttle picking people up. So that's something that could be done with this money to serve a lot of those objections rather than just bringing back the buses that weren't working.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great point. It's just, there are viable solutions. I think they're probably a lot more cost effective that can really help the people of Irving that rely on these services, right? And who knows, maybe some of this money that we get back from DART as part of these concessions, maybe that can be used for that. So I definitely am very curious to see
what they're going to do.
The city manager puts in front of DART in the next 3 months to get some of this, to get that money.
They can revive the APT. How about that? What do you think of that idea, Brian? Well, actually, that is the mayor talks a lot about an urban circulator. We're here in Las Colinas, and just connecting the hotels, the restaurants, the businesses, and the train stations by just something regular. The idea is something regular. That was my experience in Washington, D.C.
Do they still use the monorail? Is that what you're talking
That's
about?
That's the APT.
That is the APT.
monorail.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know that. I remember seeing, when I first moved to Irving in 2013, I remember one time I saw the monorail actually like working. That's the only time in the history of my experience in Irving actually seeing that monorail in use. And who knows what they were doing at the time. It is kind of impressive. It kind of looks like Logan's Run from the 1970s, like these transit systems, connecting buildings and stuff.
It is a funny thing.
It's sort of like the Futurama of the 1960s and 70s kind of brought into reality. It just goes to show, though, that like the way people imagined, cities kind of developing at that time were completely just off base.
Well, Ben Carpenter thought, this is going to be Manhattan. And his vision for the APT is basically this urban circulator idea of the mayor's. I mean, it would be a bus if we're not going to bring back the APT. But that would be a funny thing to do. Bring back the APT and the gondolas. We could spend $5 million and that would be our transportation. Well, it
would at least be entertaining. I mean, I would say that, I don't know if it would be useful, but it would be entertaining to see that. So who knows? I mean, I'd rather actually the $5 million go to that than go to DART.
Right. That's it. I don't think DART would approve gondolas at monorail. Now, I wonder if they would approve. So our GoLink service, which is our microtransit, is broken up into zones, which makes it very inconvenient. Again, convenient for DART. Yeah. It's convenient for DART to break it up into zones, not convenient for the actual people. When there's a choice between that, the over-bureaucratized institution always does what's best for it. So I don't know if they would approve something like, hey, make Irving all one zone, making GoLink much more usable. So that might be something to look at.
That would be great. I really think if we did that, you'd actually have a viable system that worked for the people that need it.
Yeah, and it's so convenient because it's picking you up and dropping you off. Now, if we ultimately get over $10 million, which it looks like we will by 2031, we already are spending, DART is spending $10 million on buses in Irving.
Yeah.
But they're half-assing it, right? It's kind of like this bus service that isn't full and robust and dependable. You have to wait, you have to transfer.
Yeah, you have to have a smartphone and study the schedule.
That's a good point.
Detail.
That's a good point. It's so complicated. That came up at the town hall. So a citizen asked or told Nadine Lee, boy, you guys are terrible with explaining your service. This is so complicated how to understand how I am getting from point A to point B. It's not the Washington, D.C., where the buses are going and they're regular.
Yep.
But, if we're spending $10 million on buses already and we're getting $10 million ultimately back, and then, of course, and I know this would never fly, but we're spending $11 million on buses for Irving ISD. We're spending a lot of money on school buses.
Sure.
You put all that money together.
But actually, I mean, compare dollar for dollar, what the ISD is doing is much more efficient and useful than what DART is doing.
Well,
I mean,
like the mayor says, butts in seats. Well, they actually are transporting people from A to Z. It's useful, so it's working. But the point is, we have all these buses. They're sitting there, and and other cities will just have public transportation and then give students bus passes. That's what's done in Europe. That's what's starting to spread. Why have two separate systems that you're paying for?
Yeah.
Property taxes are higher for the ISD than the entire city government. And, seniors are like moaning about high property taxes. Well, what if that $11 million was helping to fund a very robust system? Children could use it to get to school, but seniors who are paying the property taxes could use it to get around. $40 million could get you ride hours.
Yeah.
That's equivalent to Washington, D.C. would actually be a useful bus system.
Yeah, I think that the argument against that, just right off the top of my head, is just security for the kids, right? I think what you do is you would have to have really robust security on these buses to make, because now you have kids that aren't riding with kids; they're riding with the general population. But they do these in other cities. I know they do this in New York. I mean, I have my wife has a cousin that lives in New York, and that she's like 12, 13-year-old girl. She takes the bus to school, so it can be done. I don't know how safe those buses are, for those particular children. I don't live in that area, but at the same time, it is a possibility. It's something worth exploring for sure, because if you can combine this money that we're getting from DART with the 11 million and growing, that we spend on buses for the local ISD, that is an interesting idea. Something that probably is worth exploring. It would require creativity that's not, you don't typically see in government, but
everyone's doing their own things and protecting their own turf, and then we get this anemic bus system that's not doing it for us. There's a lot of problems with that idea. Yeah. I mean, that idea is, I'm not saying it's a good idea, but it's interesting to think about just that pot of money and what it could do.
Sure.
That would be useful.
It does open some interesting possibilities, and I know just with my with my limited experience kind of working or volunteering on the Parks and Rec board, just there is a lot of, it takes a lot to get the ISD and the Parks and Rec department to work together. And you'd think that there would be a lot of joint projects because there's a lot of shared interest, right? Like we'd like to have, like practice fields, for sports and that sort of thing that the people in the city can use and that the ISD can also use. But they really like to keep things separate. I mean, not to say it never happens, right? But it takes a lot of effort on both sides to be able to do that. We should probably pivot to primary elections that happened on Tuesday. Is there anything else you want to talk about?
A lot of things happened in the primary. We do not have time to talk about all the things.
No, yeah. It was really a fascinating election. A lot of upsets, a lot of kind of unpredictable things happened, but obviously on the statewide level that we could go into that. But we're the Irving Herald. We're really here to talk about Irving. And so I'd say that the most consequential election is probably district attorney election for Dallas County.
That was an earthquake.
Huge upset. To be honest with you, I was so frustrated with myself that I did not see that coming. To be honest, I wasn't even paying attention to it because I just assumed that Crusoe was a given.
Right? I think everybody did. So this is the district attorney's race. John Crusoe, the incumbent and a massive favorite, to the point where you don't even everyone assumes he's going to win, and he didn't.
Yeah, but how much money did he raise? It was like $400 something thousand for his hit. That was in his war chest, which it isn't atypical for a large countywide race, with several 100,000 voters that you're playing for. Um, but his challenger had 20,000.
Had nothing.
Yeah, there are single member seats in the city of Irving that have raised more than $20,000 in their campaigns.
Yeah, that wouldn't even be that competitive in an Irving citywide race. You need more money than that.
When you're trying to claw for maybe 1,500 votes or something, spending like $25,000-$30,000 is not unheard of, in a local race. So she's raised $20,000 for a countywide campaign for one of the biggest offices.
Huge amount of power.
Oh, huge.
People have to understand, DAs, attorney generals, they have more power than the president, than the governor. President cannot put you in prison. Governor can't do that.
No.
These top law enforcement officials have enormous power. It is extremely important to everybody who's living in that county, in that state. And you are running an entire bureaucracy, running an entire organization. So to get somebody, it's more rare to get a judge. Really, you're talking about, the assistants, you've run a division, you know how the department works. To get someone just out of left field who honestly can't run her own courtroom, is now going to be running this massive and massively important DA's office, 250 employees. That is scary. And she's going to be the next DA.
No, she is. Yeah, that was the election, folks. I mean, it's done. The Republicans did not put up a candidate this year.
Now, why didn't they do that?
I don't know.
They always do, but
I understand that, Dallas, especially when you get into urban Dallas, it's very blue and it's a very difficult market, for Republicans, or a very difficult venue for Republicans to compete in. But you got to throw somebody on the ballot, and in this situation, we have what I would think to be a very vulnerable candidate, if we had somebody to run, but there is nobody on the ballot. So
yeah, so that's just a massive.
Unless you have an independent challenger, but even at that point, I don't know. Can an independent challenger at this point file for the general election? That might be worth looking into, but that is very concerning. So I think she's going to be our next. She's going to be our next DA.
Dallas Morning News did an editorial. How did this happen? Don't ask us. We do not know how this happened. I mean, there was a surge. There was a surge of new voters, of new primary voters.
Yeah.
So there was the Jasmine Crockett top of the ballot election. Got a lot of enthusiasm in Dallas.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So a lot of new voters, and your name ID that Crusoe had. He had the money, he had the connections, he had incomes, he had name ID, and it just did not pan out. On the other side, what did Givens have? I mean, she had a lot of Instagram followers.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, and that's the way of the world these days.
It is.
You gotta have social media.
I think that's very telling. We are kind of slow walking this civilizational revolution, like the rise of print media, cheap paper revolutionized Western civilization. The internet is doing that, and we're experiencing it in real time. But this type of thing, you had mentioned earlier, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez winning. These kind of huge upset elections, we've been seeing this happening over the decades since the rise of the internet.
Yeah, and with really just with social media, right? With the use of meme culture, short videos, that has a lot of appeal for folks, and they tend to. That's how people are kind of looking for their. That people are making decisions based on these videos. I mean, it's not all bad. I mean, I think you start to see trends in good directions based on some of these influencers, but it's certainly not all good. There's a lot of there's a lot of issues, I guess, to take into consideration with all that.
Candidates who are more interested in being famous than doing the job.
Yeah.
And running. Republicans couldn't find anybody like that.
Yeah.
Republicans couldn't get anybody to run.
Yeah, and it is kind of a shame because I'm sure that when you actually kind of look into the details of this of this candidate, she would, I think she would be very vulnerable. I think you could convince a lot of moderate Democrats to vote for an alternative, if an alternative were there. But at this juncture, there is no alternative.
She had her assistant impersonate her. She told her assistant to pretend to be her in the courtroom, pretend to be the judge. That's one of the things that she did.
Okay, well, that's like I don't know all the rules of civil procedure, but that seems like a violation.
It seems like a violation.
Yeah.
So this is going to be people are freaking out about this because it is such an important role and so important just for everyday life for people.
Yeah,
law and order,
especially here in Irving. Like we are in Dallas County.
This affects us.
Yeah,
this affects us.
It would be interesting to see.
And you can't say it's a Soros-funded DA because there was no funding. And actually, Crusoe was a Soros.
Crusoe
candidate.
was the Soros candidate. At least I don't know if he was this time around, but he certainly was.
He didn't need it
when he first ran in 2018. Yeah, he definitely.
And he tried to end mass incarceration. He tried to turn us into San Francisco. Luckily, he backed off on the idea that you can steal anything you want as long as it's under $750. But really, kind of no excuses that the Republicans couldn't run anybody.
Nah, yeah, that's a huge. I would say Alan West probably has egg on his face, on this one.
He was unopposed, so he's a popular county chair.
Yeah,
but this is not great.
Well, he should be held accountable. I mean, again, I know he just won his primary, right, and that's pretty much the end of that. But he should be held accountable for that because I do think that I understand that maybe some of these races in the general election we're not going to be very competitive for, but we do need to be ready for these kind of upsets because again, if we'd had a candidate, I think that would have changed the character of the race based on this unexpected upset.
Yeah. So, I mean, what's going to happen with this? I'll just mention I have experience when I was working in Pennsylvania. A very inexperienced attorney general was running the attorney general's office in Pennsylvania, and it did not go well. Kathleen Kane was attorney general in 2012. She won election, didn't have a lot of experience this political star, and she basically used the powers of her office to hurt her political enemies. She was leaking secret grand jury testimony. So those are the type of things where it can just really go south. She actually got disbarred and was trying to be attorney general even though she didn't have a law license.
Wow.
And we see what the Soros prosecutors do in other places. Larry Krasner in Philadelphia, homicide rates spiking. So it can really affect, I mean, that's the Soros strategy. He realized these sleepy little DA races, I can pour money into it and basically change the law. Changing the law is very difficult to elect a candidate to actually change it. You change the enforcement, you're de facto changing it, and it's had a wave of negative consequences. So brace yourself.
Brace yourself, Dallas County. Brace yourself, Irving. Winter is coming, right? So we'll see what happens. Great discussion. Obviously, we'll keep an eye out. Obviously, there's more to come. We have some city council elections coming up in May.
We'll be following
that with more detail. Some interesting developments there, but we just don't have time to talk about it today. But in our next time. So, all right. Until next time, enjoy.